Have a seat. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on the show. So, your artwork, I'm gonna see how I can put this. Seems like you have an uncomfortable relationship with your chosen profession in some ways.
Yes.
Your artwork is all very confrontational, and a lot of it is specifically targeted at the art world. Do you find yourself, do you feel like you have to be critical of the art world because you want to make it a better place, or are you critical of the art world just so you can inhabit it in a sane way?
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, when I started doing the work, I came out of graduate school in 2001 after 9/11 into essentially what was like a booming art market. And when I was in graduate school, the kind of assumption was you'll make no money off of this, don't expect any success. And I watched some people from my peer group, kind of rocket to success in this kind of a market that I didn't expect to come into. And so a lot of my work was trying to make sense of like the kind of economy of exposure and figuring out how the thing worked so that I kind of wouldn't go insane and take a lot of the feelings of, the kind of shit that goes on in your head, kind of what we call the hierarchy of relative success, kind of constant comparison, and actually channel it into, the artwork.
Right. Do you find that that the kind of art you make, is it in direct response to the kind of art that people buy? Like the fact that, this kind of, you're basically going after the people who are at the top of the food chain, the people who are the buyers, the galleries. You're super critical of that stuff.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that?
Well, initially it was a lot of it had to do with this idea that, there was a kind of cult of personality. And so I remember seeing this cover of like The New Yorker with Dash Snow and Ryan McGinley, kind of spooning with each other.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the art that I first started making was not about trying to make something that somebody would want to buy. It was like paintings of fictional New York magazine covers where I just sort of inserted myself into these conversations I had no business being in,
right.
And like just sort of saying, well, let's just make it up as a way of being sort of critical of that format and, this kind of, all the emphasis on the artist's personality. But more recently, I've actually started making objects that are a kind of critique, and then I critique those works. So, I had some drywall studs turned into pentagons and chrome plated over here on Willoughby, and then place them on a mirror, and then have a painting that's sort of about, why shiny objects are kind of a trope in the art world. And
why are shiny objects kind of a trope?
I don't know.
I feel like you must have you've got to have some feeling about this where like people are buying this because it's inoffensive, or why is that stuff popular? Why is it popular?
I don't know. Someone asked, if there was like a capitalist aesthetic, panel that we were on that was kind of called Confronting Bushwick, was sort of maybe a ludicrous panel, but somebody asked, is there an
Confronting
aesthetic?
Bush?
Yeah, Confronting Bushwick, like...
Oh, Bushwick. Oh,
yeah.
that makes more sense.
That's
I was like, I hope we're
panel.
talking about the president.
Yeah. Maybe
could be weird.
Bushwood, Ridge Bush,
What do you think of George Bush's art? You seen his paintings?
He likes it. I think he likes it.
First, before the kind of self-portraits came out, I heard he was painting dogs.
He does paint dogs.
This is fucking horrible for art. Like, leave art alone, motherfucker. You've ruined
everything else.
Countries, killed millions, and like,
just give us this one space.
Just get out of it. We've got enough problems. We don't need your paintings. And then, when an art critic like Jerry Saltz starts, kind of validating it and saying that this is a good thing, this man's finding his like inner spiritual dimension or something, it's like, let's just leave it alone.
Let's talk about Jerry Saltz. Maybe not specifically. Let's talk about our art critics, their place in the world, what their function is. Do you think it's important? Do you think they're important? Do they serve a purpose, or are they really just facilitating artists to just move product, essentially?
Well, I have a very interesting relationship with that because
Yeah.
I started out as an art critic.
Really? Okay.
Not, it was more of, like I said, I came out of graduate school and came into New York, and the markets, the emphasis was on kind of like selling, work in a way that I didn't expect. And also the dialogue kind of stopped. People stopped talking about ideas, and a lot of the conversations you'll have with artists are like, so what you got going on? Like, what are you doing next? Do you have any shows? And it's this kind of constant fucking measurement where you're like, really? So I started writing, one, to kind of like continue this dialogue around art and the ideas, but also like to just infiltrate the gallery system. Because if I walked into a gallery with some slides, like that's dinosaur talking, but going in with like slides or something, the gallerists are like, oh, don't talk to me, go away. But if you walk in with like a tripod or a camera and you're like, hi, I'm writing for the Brooklyn Rail or something, they're like, come sit down. Would you like a drink? Sit. Right. We'll tell you everything about the work. And eventually somebody was like, do you make art? And I'm like, sure, yeah, but that's not my primary purpose. But if you're interested, I have some artwork I could show you.
So,
but what I guess to answer the question, I think a lot of criticism. This other artist and also sometimes critic, Mira Shore, once told me that she stopped writing reviews because she didn't want to be engaged in the kind of career building that entails as an artist herself. Right. And at a certain point, the artwork that I was doing was so critical in and of itself that I wasn't sure if another artist would ever want to see my name on like an art review of their work. Right. Just like it's that asshole. Yeah. No.
It would make me really nervous, I have to be honest.
But it does serve that, it seems like it can serve that function. Like you open up Artform and, it's just this kind of generic editorial voice. Yeah. And you wonder why is this review necessary 6 months after the show came out?
I think your work is tremendously interesting for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it's very confrontational and critical, but it seems like it almost always turns inward in some way. And is there a reason why that is?
Well, I think part of it is I was always trying to make sure that I was implicating myself, in this kind of process, but also to get into the kind of internal monologue. And I was also very interested in like fiction, in college. And, there are these narratives that we tell. And, and when I really began with work, it was a very elaborate fiction. It was like authoring, a couple of versions of Spider-Man comic book, where it was, and so these profiles kind of required me to kind of turn it back on the artist, so I became the subject of the critique, which after a while, I started realizing I'm kind of maybe creating a bit of a monster, and that it gets a little schizophrenic, it certainly did for a while. But.
Well, I'm a big fan. I'm so happy to have you on the show. William, thank you so much for being here. Guys, give it up for William Powhida. Thank you.